Oh my god!
called Hyrule,
Oh my god!
created by beings of supreme divinity.
No way! Oh! Yes! It's happening!
Small
That's all we're getting. Oh my god. Yes! That's all I need.
That's so
all,
cool.
That's all I need. Yes!
This year?
Yes!
Okay, that's the holiday title.
This
100%.
year? I can't believe that within the year we will finally be playing a brand new, technically new Zelda game, and one that is widely considered to be the best game in the series, and one of, if not the greatest video games ever made, in the form of a ground-up remake. I can guarantee that just about everyone watching this video has some level of attachment to this game because Ocarina of Time is a very special game for many, myself included. It might not be my favourite game in the series, but there's an undeniable quality to it that makes both it and its 2011 remaster for the 3DS classics. Even though our first look at this new remake was very brief, it's still filled with several details that paint a picture of some of the things to expect in this monumental title. This video is going to break down some of these notable features and use them as the basis for several other predictions about this game and what shape it could take. If at any point you find yourself enjoying the video, I would really appreciate it if you left a like or subscribed, or better yet, leave a comment so I can continue this discussion with all of you. Without further ado, let's get into it. The first and most or I suppose ear-catching thing we notice in the trailer is the voiceover. Having been released in the gaming year of our Lord's 1998, there wasn't exactly a wealth of games with riveting and deep voice performances. Like every Zelda game before 2017, the audio behind all the characters were limited to one or two sound effects, and as iconic as these are, I'm not sure if this will hold up in a new modern release. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom after it introduced voice-acted cutscenes to the series, and while I personally love the result, I can understand why it was considered a little divisive. In the Ocarina of Time remake trailer, we have a narrator reciting the game's opening premise, and I think this is a pretty big indicator that voice acting is something the series will do going forward. It's not clear who exactly the voice belongs to, but I personally think it just exists for the sake of the trailer and probably isn't worth overanalyzing too much. Something that Nintendo hasn't done that I would really like to see attempted in this game is full voice acting. Given that the game only has so many NPCs, far less than a game like Breath of the Wild, it's not completely out of the question to see them potentially move in this direction. A good point of comparison here, I think, is Final Fantasy VII, a game that released a year before Ocarina of Time and exclusively used text boxes to communicate the story. Of course, this has all changed in the phenomenal Remake trilogy where all of the characters are fully voiced, including side characters and passers-by on the street. I don't know about you, but I'd love to walk into Castletown in the remake and actually hear the crowd speak to the people trying to get the attention of vendors and just really take in that extra level of atmosphere. When it comes to the important story characters and cutscenes, I have no doubt that these will be fully voiced, but I have no clue at this time who exactly would provide these, and as much as I like the Wild Era cast, I think it's time we look for some new people. What I'm trying to say is that if Nintendo wants to be GTA 6 for Game of the Year, they'll cast my goat Jennifer English as Zelda and continue that tradition. The trailer's opening is defined by a series of slow panning shots across a beautiful tapestry that depicts Hyrule Castle, the Great Deku Tree, the Kokiri, and finally Link. The visual style is really interesting, almost reminiscent of the opening of Wind Waker in terms of presentation, and it really sets the stage for the legendary adventure we'll be playing very soon. Much like the audio, it's unclear at this stage if the visual will actually be in the game or if it exists just for the purposes of the trailer, but honestly, I'd be happy either way. It's also pretty clear that the tapestry in the trailer is but a section of a larger whole, and I'd love if we saw the full version in this game's credits or as some sort of special backdrop at some stage. Going back to an auditory examination of this trailer, there's another very promising sign of what's to come. Ocarina of Time stands out in the series as the game with perhaps the most iconic soundtrack of them all. The Legend of Zelda has given us some of the greatest pieces of game music ever composed, many of these either coming from or being popularized by Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time 3D did remaster the music of the original, but only updated the digital software on which they were originally created, leading to a very similar listening experience. with the exception of what I think was a fully orchestrated track for the 3DS staff credits. Now with both the power of modern hardware and freedom from the limitations of a handheld device, the Ocarina of Time Remake soundtrack can finally be heard as it should be, a fully orchestrated score that captures the original intention behind the tracks while still giving us that same intimate sense of nostalgia. I didn't know exactly what I was watching until the teaser for the remake first started. I knew it was Zelda, but any doubt in my mind disappeared the moment those first 3 notes of Saria's song played. And then the title drop combined with the Hyrule Field theme. Now that was just perfection. If there's one thing that Nintendo consistently knocks out of the park, even in their weaker releases, it's their soundtracks, and I have no reason to believe that Ocarina of Time, of all things, will be an exception to that. While we see very little of what I'm tentatively going to call the actual game, we do see something very important, our first glimpse at Link as a child in Kokiri Forest. I don't really know what the general consensus is around his new design, but personally, I love it. His tunic looks like it's actually made of materials gathered from nature, as it should considering the circumstances, and I like the detail of what looks like leather armor over the top of the shirt. It's a far cry from his original look in the game, and yet it's still so distinctly Zelda. This look at Link shows us that Nintendo won't shy away from taking new approaches in how their characters look. I think most will look very similar, but there are a couple things I would like to see. On the topic of Link, I'd love to see his adult design reworked ever so slightly, maybe taking some cues from both his new young Link look and his The Kingdom's Link, specifically with the Champion's Levers set. I don't know, I just really like his look from that game with the extra bits of armor and padding, and I hope they consider some little additions like that for this new take on what is arguably his most iconic design. There are a couple other things I'd like to see, more unique designs for the Gorons and Zora, rather than the same ones used over and over, and while we're at it, it's probably time we reevaluate the Gerudo too, give them some better designs. As for all the other characters, I don't really have any big requests, though I do want to quickly mention that I hope they don't tone down some of the game's darker elements, like the Bottom of the Well, Shadow Temple, Redeads, Dead Hand, or Bongo Bongo. And that's about it for everything that we can directly infer from just the trailer alone, but if you thought I was going to leave it at that, you would be mistaken, since there is still plenty of room to speculate on some of the other parts of this game. Starting with the simple things, I have no doubt that we'll see a significant number of quality of life changes to the game. These might include things that the 3DS remaster already did, like turn the iron boots into an item that can be taken on and off with just a button press, instead of the endless menuing in the original, or reduce the intensity of Navi's hints and add motion-controlled aimings for items like the bow. But there's also new changes that could be made to make the experience better. I think it's safe to say, considering this is Nintendo we're talking about, but I'm sure this new remake will effectively use the new hardware, not just for graphical fidelity but also for gameplay. The Switch 2 Joy-Cons feature a brand new mouse mode, and I'm sure this will be used in some way, maybe for aiming or even a new feature of some kind, but there's really no predicting Nintendo when it comes to the specifics about these sorts of things. Interestingly, the remake's description actually released earlier than Nintendo intended, and while they quickly took it down, people noticed that the description specifically mentioned timeless gameplay. While many of the quality of life changes I mentioned just now are still likely to be included, this clearly indicates that Nintendo are going to stick as close to the original as possible. This will mean no climbing, gliding, and all that modern Zelda stuff. Hell, we might not even see a dedicated jump button. I wonder if we might see some changes to combat though, because while Ocarina of Time's combat is solid enough, I personally believe that it was perfected in Twilight Princess, so I definitely wouldn't be opposed to some features from that making their return, especially because the games are so intrinsically tied together. Something I'd be pretty disappointed if the remake doesn't do is make efforts to expand Hyrule as we know it. Being one of the most iconic games of all time, I think if the game was exactly the same beyond the visual overhaul, that would be a bit of a wasted opportunity. Places like Hyrule Field, Gerudo Desert, and even the Lost Woods are practically begging for an overhaul, and I'd love to see how exactly they go about this. Maybe parts of Hyrule Field are noticeably scarred from the Hyrule Civil War that took place some years prior. Gerudo Desert could be a proper explorable area instead of a path through an endless sandstorm. There's potential to expand the Lost Woods too, add more areas within, and make them feel like this forbidden place that you can actually lose your way in. This isn't even mentioning places like Castletown, Kakariko Village, Death Mountain, and such, which I think would greatly benefit from things that bring the parts of the original experience we were forced to use our imagination for to life with all of this new technology. Finally, there's one more interesting thing that the trailer raised in its final moments of footage that differs significantly from the original and remastered versions. As Link is sleeping in his house at Kokiri Forest, he's clearly having the same nightmare he experiences at the start of his story, only with a twist. Clear as day, the Triforce of Courage appears on the back of his left hand. Many have questioned this addition, as we never saw the Triforce appear on Link's hand in the original game until after Ganondorf's wish to rule Hyrule split the Triforce, but there is a possible explanation. Link had the Triforce mark on his hand in Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link, which was what set that story more or less into motion, and we could see something very similar happen in this remake. Even though this detail is pretty small, all things considered, it begs the question of whether we will see other changes made to the story. I personally wouldn't be opposed to some minor additions and maybe even some retcons to maintain the series' continuity a little better, but I think Nintendo is acutely aware of what changing a game as beloved as this would result in. And that's about everything we're able to cover right now. Echoing the opening of the video, I cannot wait to play this game, and I'm sure all of you watching from home feel the same way. There is potential, slim but still there, that this game actually lives up to the hype and rivals the original in quality, or hell, supersedes it. But with that being said, I want to try and avoid putting my expectations too high, because that's what happened last time. Let me know down in the comments your thoughts on the Ocarina of Time remake. I'd love to chat and maybe do a follow-up video if there's enough interest or new information. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Stay safe and stay subscribed.